So let's jump to the packaging, because you in the HLS DASH or CMAF camp these days?
Both. So at both Warner Bros. Discovery and then my previous job at Hulu, we've been using both HLS and DASH. And interestingly enough, actually, like even distributing it, the split between those two is almost identical. So we use HLS for Apple devices, and we use DASH for streaming to all other devices. What's common to them is the CMAF format. And so one of the things that I kind of get a little bit annoyed about in our industry is when people refer to CMAF as a streaming protocol, and I always kind of feel like I need to correct them and say, no, it's not a streaming protocol. Because CMAF is really two things, right? Like CMAF is on one hand a standardized version of what we frequently call fragmented MP4, right? The ISO-based media file format. And what the CMAF spec did is basically just define, look, if you're going to use FMP4 and HLS and DASH, here's the boxes you need to have, and here's how common encryption gets applied to that, and so on. And so it's really just a more kind of buttoned down version of what we had always called FMP4. And so in many cases, like if you have been packaging either DASH or HLS in FMP4 media segments, you're most likely already CMAF compliant. You're already using CMAF. But the other thing that CMAF is, right, like the CMAF spec also defines a hypothetical, a logical media presentation model. And so it essentially describes what really kind of, when you read through the lines, will sound a lot like HLS or DASH without HLS or DASH. It's really defining kind of, here's the relationship between tracks and segments and fragments and chunks, and here's how you sort of address like all those different levels of the media presentation. And so you can then think of HLS and DASH really being kind of the physical manifestations, right, of that hypothetical presentation model. And there's a really great spec that CTA authored. So I think it's CTA, think 5005. That is the HLS DASH interoperability spec, and it's heavily based on CMAF and using kind of CMAF as the unifying model, and then really describing how both HLS and DASH plug into CMAF and how they really kind of you can describe the same concepts in both. And so it's almost like HLS and DASH are just programming languages that are describing the same, sort of pseudocode.